Outside of the last mission in Driver called President's Run, I simply love the game. Sure, you couldn't change cars and whatever, but for me that was perfectly fine, and that's what made Driver Driver, because it's just you and the car. I didn't want it to turn into GTA in 3D. And no, the first mission in the garage is not a tutorial, and it is not a hard mission at all. Driver 2 continues the trend of breaking boundaries, just like the first Driver did. While the first Driver threw you in 4 different cities that you could drive around and explore and have fun, run from the police and whatever, Driver 2 does essentially exactly the same thing, but in 4 different new cities: Chicago, Havana, Las Vegas and Rio de Janeiro. Yep, Driver went international. Oh, okay, at least American. Now you can step out of your car, walk around, or even change cars. Well, as long as the police is not actively after you. The cities have more details to them, they are bigger, they have secrets in them that you can discover. Each city simply is a bigger playground for the player, which is a good thing. But not all is fine and dandy, and just because Driver 2 is a bigger game that needs 2 discs, it doesn't mean it's a better game, but one step at a time. The story is actually not one of the strengths of Driver 2, but, well, just like the first game actually. You continue to play as John Tanner, but this time around you have a partner called Tobias Jones. Both are supposed to go track down a guy called Pink Lenny. That's the guy we see in the beginning of the game talking to some Brazilian dude. Pink Lenny essentially is a money man that once worked for a gang leader called Solomon Kane, but he betrayed him to work for a Brazilian gang leader called Alvaro Vasquez. That's why in the opening scene, Pink Lenny is chased by 2 dudes that work for Kane, but Lenny escapes both. Tanner's job now is to get to Lenny, because since he is the money man, he is contributing heavily to gang wars between Kane and Vasquez that are happening in Chicago. So Lenny is now chased by everybody. Kane wants him because of the betrayal. Tanner wants him to stop the money laundering thing. Vasquez and the police want him as well. Lenny is a very popular guy. At some point, Tanner even works together with Kane to get to Lenny. While Tanner gets Lenny in the end, it turns out that Kane and Vasquez now work together. Or maybe have been working together all along and their gang wars were just for fun or a disguise or something, I don't know. That ending was a tad confusing, to be honest. Point is, while not a bad story, that's not what makes Driver 2 at all. But hey, one thing done far better here than in the prequel are the cutscenes. While they were stylish but hard to follow because of the camera angles they've used, in Driver 2 they are far better. They continue to have that movie style of old, but this time around the camera is almost always in front of the characters or follows them around. It's far easier to recognize everything, it sounds clearer, and they are longer. Reflections did an amazing job with these cutscenes, especially some camera angles or scenarios are a marvel to see. For example, I love this scene during the night with the moon in the background. Another example of a game that has an amazing scene or stage like this is a game I've already talked about, Darkwatch. So this was not the first time I've played Driver 2. Back then I was a little shit and I gave up on the game because of one major issue the game has, and by now we all know what it is: the frame rate. The issue made the game unplayable for me back then, so I gave up on it. I mean, just look at this shit. This crap happens occasionally and can absolutely destroy your good run, because once you see this, whatever you press on the controller gets delayed hardcore. I mean, this time around, I still beat the whole game playing like this, mainly because there is no other option since Driver 2 is PlayStation exclusive. Playing the original disc on a PlayStation 3 seems to reduce these frame rate issues by a tiny bit, but damn, I cannot tell you how many good runs I had, but then I failed because of these frame rate issues. It was really infuriating, but again, I still beat the game this way and yeah, no, it was not fun. This is a major factor that brings Driver 2 down and makes it worse than the prequel by quite a lot. I don't know if Reflections were under pressure or if they were just way too ambitious, but this is inexcusable. However, this isn't to say that the game overall is bad, quite the contrary. I think it still is an amazing game that sadly feels unfinished. This aspect actually reminded me of Gran Turismo 2, a game that was also released in an unfinished state, but still is an amazing game. Personally, I found the 4 cities in the prequel a bit more fun to drive around. Well, maybe because I am way more familiar with them, but Chicago, Havana, Las Vegas and Rio de Janeiro are also a lot of fun to drive around and explore. They feel vibrant, they feel a bit more alive because also there are more civilians walking around, and the developers paid a lot of attention to details here. For example, in Rio de Janeiro they could have gone the lazy route and keep everything in English, but certain buildings have words written in Portuguese, and when the police follows you, you have real Brazilians talking around. I mean, at least I assume they were real Brazilians, because they spoke Portuguese very fluent and seemingly natively. Similar goes for Havana, where they talked in Spanish. And yes, I understand both languages very well. The cities are very detailed and fairly big, likely bigger than in Driver 1. You have a few secrets to discover as well. Well, I mean, they mostly come down to a hidden car per city, but hey, they still are secrets. It's actually amazing what Reflections accomplished here, and it's no surprise Driver 2 needs 2 discs for this. On disc 1 you play in Chicago and Havana, while on disc 2 you play in Las Vegas and Rio de Janeiro. You have access to quite a lot of cars even before playing freely in any city. Heck, if you want to drive a fire truck, then you can. Drive a bus? Why not? Sure, they are slow and the sirens on the fire trucks actually don't do anything other than making noise because all of the other cars literally don't give a shit about anybody but themselves. Across all cities and including all 4 secret cars you can discover, you have 40 cars total. That is simply an amazing achievement on the almighty PlayStation 1, and mind you, this is pre-GTA 3 and a console generation earlier since Driver 2 was released in the year 2000 on the PlayStation, while GTA 3 only happened in 2002 on the PlayStation 2. The walking itself is a bit jerky, and maybe that's why the game doesn't have many missions where you walk around. Personally, I don't like it all that much that Driver 2 introduced you being able to get out of the car, because one reason I love Driver 1 more than any GTA or even later Driver titles is because I just drive around. I think it was simply unnecessary to add a feature like this, but since it's there, it's okay. Maybe if they added more missions or parts where you walk around through the undercover mode and made the walking less jerky, then maybe I would have liked this feature a bit more than I do. Speaking of undercover mode, you will have around 40 missions total until you beat the game, which is around the same amount the prequel had. But unlike that one, there are no two different endings here. There is just one ending, which is a minor step back, let's call it. And oh boy, prepare to rage quit a lot in this game, or almost rage quit. You see, Driver 1 certainly was challenging, but 100% fair. Well, until the last mission called President's Run, because you need 100% luck to beat that one. Just watch my driver video for it. But until that point, I think the difficulty in the first game felt more balanced. In the second one, the difficulty seems to be all over the place. Some missions are piece easy, but then a mission happens where you need hours to beat. Chase the Gunman is one of those missions and probably considered the most difficult mission in the game. And while yes, it is fucking hard to beat that one, there are two other missions that easily rival Chase the Gunman, one of which I think surpasses it. Both missions are in Havana, not even halfway through the game. The first one is Hijack the Truck. I mean, chasing the truck itself is fine, but the really challenging part is that you get chased around by another driver. But similar to Chase the Gunman later on, or similar missions where you have to chase somebody, there is a major issue that almost tanks the whole game, but I will get to that in a few seconds. The other mission, and this is the one I personally think is genuinely the hardest in the whole game, is Find the Clue, just 2 missions after Hijack the Truck. In here you have to find 4 cars, ram them to death and find the clue. Sounds easy, but it isn't, mainly because of the timer that is really on the short side. I mean, just getting to the first car will take you around 2 minutes. Then taking him out might take you another 2 minutes if you are unlucky. But then you have to get out of your car, enter the enemy's car, immediately exit it, search for a new car to drive because your old one likely is destroyed, and hunt down the next car. I had to restart countless times and almost rage quit because of all the things you have to do that seemed impossible in the time given. And yes, the clue is always in the last car, which is rather stupid. Unless you hit the cars full force from the front and hope that they make some mistakes so you can hit them again or even stop them, then you will have a very hard time here. Maybe you have noticed that the enemy cars drive almost as if they were drunk or on drugs, I don't know, which might help a little bit because they might hit other cars in process and slow down, but this also may work against you because they suddenly might do a 180 or something and you can't anticipate that. Sure, it adds to the challenge when they do that, and it would be challenging if there were just 2 or 3 cars total to chase around in that amount of time, but 4? Nah man. Unlike President's Run, where I actually broke a controller when I was a kid, I will admit, but still beat it after 8 hours, of course with a new controller. Here I didn't break anything, but oh boy, I was near breaking another controller. Personally, I think Get the Clue is the hardest mission in the game, but Chase the Gunman and Hijack the Truck are certainly up there. But that's because of one major issue that I really despise in Driver 2. And for this I will use a different mission where I had to chase Jericho around. The major issue I have is that the enemy cars like in Chase the Gunman, Hijack the Truck or Pursue Jericho are tanks. You can ram them full force or whatever, but they will never get affected by it. Instead, you are the one that flies and spins around. I mean, I get that those cars are supposed to be hard to ram and chase around, but do they really need to be tanks? Not even fire trucks in Take a Ride mode are this tanky. You see, I think this is why people think Chase the Gunman is the hardest mission in the game. It's because the enemy car is a tank that stays on his path no matter what, and you can't do anything about it. Sadly, this turns a potential challenging and fun chase into one that requires more luck than anything. I was able to beat Pursue Jericho because in one retry he randomly slowed down for whatever reason, and similar happened with Chase the Gunman. In Hijack the Truck I got lucky because I was able to drive in front of the truck and take him out, but for that to even happen, he couldn't drive to the right or left in the very first intersection, because if he did, I was done. Mainly because the car that is also chasing you and hits you full force. Meaning, missions like these require you to restart over and over again, so the enemy car takes a specific path for you to even have a chance to chase him down and stop him. That's not challenging and not fun, but rather frustrating and annoying. Sure, even in the prequel the enemy car could feel a bit tanky, let's say. You require a bit of luck to finish certain missions as well, no questions about it, but Driver 2 goes over the top with it. Once you've beaten those 3 missions, however, the rest is a cakewalk, at least in comparison, especially the final mission where you finally get Lenny. Some missions can still be hard, but nowhere near as hard as Get the Clue, at least for me. And this is one issue I have with Driver 2. The difficulty is not gradual and not balanced. But hey, graphically the game is awesome. Sure, there is warping here and there, the draw distance is poor. I mean, really poor. And I don't understand why the reflections on your car, especially during the night, are gone. I mean, compare these two scenes here. Driver 1 looks more polished, which might be a result of the rushed feeling of Driver 2. But otherwise the game looks and sounds stunning. It continues the trend of paying homage to movies from a certain time, and here Driver 2 pays homage to a movie called French Connection. But not much though. In Chicago there is a mission where you have to chase down a train, and that's straight out of that movie, but after that I didn't recognize anything else. But then again, I don't watch many movies, so I don't know. The driving physics continue to be awesome. The heavy and hard to handle cars are quite a marvel and a lot of fun. However, one thing I found to be a bit over the top was the colliding. It was a bit too much of that bouncing effect. Sure, in the prequel the same thing happened, but here it seems that they have increased that bounce effect, which makes missions like Pursue Jericho or Hijack the Truck a nightmare. I find it sad that a mission like the very first one in the garage from the prequel isn't here, but then again, Tanner has proven himself in the first game, so he doesn't need to do that again, I guess. Don't worry though, that mission will appear again in a later Driver title. Minigames continue to be a thing, and this time around you can play it in split screen. Only in first person though, but then again, these games are just extras. I mean, they are fine, but nothing beyond that. In Take a Ride mode, you just do whatever, and unless you use cheats or something, you better beat the game first to also have access to Las Vegas and Rio de Janeiro. But once you have access to all 4 cities, then it's a blast to get into chases with the majestic driving physics, or to just drive around for fun and marvel these cities. Chicago resembles some cities in the first Driver. Havana tends to have very narrow streets, Las Vegas tends to have wide roads, and Rio de Janeiro is a mix of all of them. They even added curves in the roads instead of just having 90-degree corners like in the prequel. But then again, some sections seem to have too many curves around for no reason, unless the real cities are also built like this. I don't know. Look, I don't hate Driver 2 by any means. In fact, I love it. But in this case, I have a rather love-hate relationship with the game. I mean, even without the obvious issues it has, like the poor draw distance or the frame rate issues to the point where the game actually freezes for half a second. Even then, I would prefer the original Driver. Yes, even taking nostalgia out of it. Because I don't think being able to get out of the car really did the game any favors. The difficulty tends to be unbalanced, and some missions, the enemy cars are pure tanks that change a challenging mission into a frustrating one quite quickly. And mind you that I'm talking about the PlayStation version. I know there's something like Driver 2 for PC which supposedly takes care of obvious issues the original had, but I don't really care about that one because I always make the point to play the game in its original state as it was released day one. But if you want to experience Driver 2 regardless, then I guess the PC Driver 2 is the best option, or maybe an emulation of the original. But if you want to experience the most authentic version, then play the original as is, meaning physically on a physical console, as I did.